What's going on, guys, and welcome back to JFT Sports. Today we're doing something different, and we're just going to give you every week after every event, we're going to give you a little recap of all the fights on the card, starting with today, UFC 235. That went down live March 2nd in the T-Mobile Arena, Las Vegas, Nevada, that starred Jon Jones versus Anthony Smith and Kamaru Usman versus Tyron Woodley for the two titles. We had the welterweight title and the light heavyweight titles on the line, and we're going to start our recap with Diego Sanchez and Mickey Gall. Now, the question coming into the fight was, how will Diego Sanchez's age affect him, and does he still have enough to get it done inside the octagon against a young and hungry challenger in Mickey Gall? And damn, did Diego Sanchez answer all those questions we had. Diego Sanchez put the fight on him, showcased that he still has a chin, put the pressure on Mickey Gall from the opening bell, delivered beautiful body shots with pinpoint accuracy, able to slow Mickey Gall going into the second round, where Diego Sanchez took the fight to the ground and dominated Mickey Gall on way to a TKO stoppage. In the second round, Diego Sanchez picks up a big win and will now look for probably a ranked top 15 opponent at welterweight, 170 pounds. The next fight on the card was Cody Stamann versus Alejandro Perez, and in a super close fight that showcased a lot of stand-up fighting, and the only time we really saw any grappling was Stamann going for a takedown and Perez doing a really good job to fend them off. Now, in the fight, the only real slam came for Alejandro Perez, where he launched Stamann on his head, but nonetheless, Stamann was able to weather the storm on the feet, and Stamann was able to edge out a unanimous decision victory in the second fight of the UFC ESPN Plus prelims. And then we got to the two very, very interesting fights. We went to Johnny Walker and Misha Cirkunov. Now, Johnny Walker was getting his first top 15 opponent. Now, the question going in again was, how will the prospect handle top 15 competition? And in shocking and in beautiful fashion, Johnny Walker did it the exact way I think a lot of fans expected, with a flying knee 36 seconds in, which floored Misha Cirkunov on way to a Johnny Walker KO finish. Johnny Walker with a brutal knee that just landed pinpoint on the jaw of Misha Cirkunov and sent waves through the T-Mobile Arena, and has sent waves through the UFC brass, the UFC fans, everybody, the UFC light heavyweight division. They're all on notice now for Johnny Walker, who even in the post-fight dance actually injured his shoulder, dislocating it, trying to do the worm. Now, on Twitter after the event, news came out that Johnny Walker is fine, and he will be able to participate in a next fight. His next fight shouldn't be too late from now. The final fight on the ESPN Plus undercard, Zabit Magomedsharipov took on his hardest hitting opponent in Jeremy Stephens, and in an extremely close fight. I like to say fights like this split fans directly down the middle. This fight was pressure versus precision. Now, Jeremy Stephens pushed the pace, trying to land the big overhand right, while Zabit Magomedsharipov circled on the outside, using good footwork to kind of slow most of Jeremy Stephens' attacks. It looked like Stephens was feinting more than he was punching, but the time Stephens did punch, he wasn't landing. Zabit kind of won this fight. Zabit won by unanimous decision. He won the fight with that Floyd style on the feet, where he's counteracting the pressure from his opponent with more precise striking. I'm interested to see the striking statistics from the fight, but nonetheless, Zabit, paired with precision on the feet, being able to move with good footwork, and the ground dominance from Zabit. Every time this fight touched the ground, Zabit was moving well, delivering more elbows, doing more damage. And I just thought it was a really close fight, but I did give the fight to Zabit just on the fact precision beat the pressure on this night. And that would wrap up a great ESPN Plus prelim card, and we get to a great main card, which is opened up by Fight of the Night Dana White, the $50,000 bonuses. Cody Gardbrandt versus Pedro Munhoz. Cody Gardbrandt goes back to the ways of the TJ Dillashaw fight, where he throws caution to the wind and just decides to start teeing off. And now, as much as you would think that would benefit Cody Gardbrandt in a fight like this, with the power that Cody has displayed in the past, Pedro Munhoz was actually the one to take advantage in these exchanges, knocking out Cody Gardbrandt in the first round with around 4:27 left. In what was the statement victory Pedro Munhoz has been looking for to get himself higher up in that bantamweight division. I'm interested in seeing where Pedro Munhoz is going to go with this win, but only time will tell. We move on to Tecia Torres versus Weili Zhang. versus Weili Zhang is actually how you pronounce her name. Zhang and Torres was an extremely close fight. I thought Zhang was going to dominate the fight, but I didn't give him enough credit to Tecia Torres, who's a seasoned UFC strawweight. The tiny tornado, really, the two put it on each other in takedown scrambles. Both looked so even in strength and skill. It just looked like Zhang edged it with her kicks on the feet, which gave her a unanimous decision victory, and it put Zhang on the map. Zhang was ranked number 14 or 15 going into this fight, whereas Tecia Torres was ranked number 7. So we're going to get to see where Weili Zhang goes from here. And then we get to the 3 big fights of the card, and we get to the Funky One's debut, Ben Askren taking on former champion, seasoned veteran, and just scary dude, Robbie Lawler. And in an absolute vicious start to the fight, Ben Askren tries to find the back of Robbie Lawler, but the Ruthless One sky highs Ben Askren and drops Ben Askren directly on his head, and then continues to lock the wrist and just go in with the ground strikes. Robbie Lawler dominated the first 2 minutes of this fight until Ben Askren was able to collect his wits. As rough as it was, I think Robbie Lawler should have pushed the pace a little more on the feet there, but Ben Askren was able to fence Lawler. By what I mean fence, he was able to push Lawler up against the fence, and when he found a single leg, he looked for the ankle pick, found a single leg, transitioned into the back, and transitioned into a bulldog choke. Now the decision gets controversial. Robbie Lawler's arm goes limp, but it does come back before Herb Dean grabs him. So there is the argument there. And when the submission was called, when Herb Dean thought that Robbie Lawler went out, Robbie Lawler got up and got in Herb Dean's face, and an argument to be had for anybody in Robbie Lawler's corner, which Dana brought up in the post-fight press conference, was you don't go to bed and get back up yelling at Herb Dean. You don't do that when you're getting choked out. So a controversial finish nonetheless. But nonetheless, something exactly what Ben Askren probably would have liked. Ben Askren was able to kind of silence the critics that say this guy has boring fights because he just had a great fight, which could have won fight of the night if not for that Cody Gardbrandt Pedro Munhoz fight, and still got the win. So good for Ben Askren picking up a win in his first fight in the UFC. He's now eyeing the winner of the London card, Darren Till versus Jorge Masvidal, whereas the UFC, I think, is going to be pushing the Robbie Lawler rematch. Now we get to the co-main event and the main event of the evening, 2 title fights. In the first of the 2, the welterweight strap is on the line between Tyron Woodley and Kamaru Usman. And who would have expected a 5-round dominant performance by Kamaru Usman? Usman pushed the pace for every round and dominated every second of every round of this fight. I was sitting there just wondering, when is Woodley going to push? When is Woodley going to press Usman with a flurry of strikes? It never happened. I thought when Woodley landed, he did not, I don't want to say he hurt Usman because at no point did he hurt Usman, but when the punches landed, I thought he might have had the advantage, but decided to play counter wrestler and try and keep the fight on the feet to where he had very little success. He was being ragdolled by Usman at some points, dominated on the ground by Usman at most of the points, and Usman won a clean, unanimous decision. Tyron Woodley said that he kind of fainted in there. I don't know what his game plan was. Askren was mad that he couldn't get into the octagon. Not get into the octagon, but couldn't get cage side to talk to his teammate, which he normally would for title fights. But nonetheless, we have a new welterweight champion, Kamaru, the Nigerian Nightmare, Usman. Now we get, finally, to the main event of the evening, Jon Jones versus Anthony Smith, in what was a fight that just goes to show you how good Jon Jones is and why the odds were as they were. I agree with Anthony Smith, as Anthony Smith was saying, I did exactly what I didn't want to do with Jon Jones. I let Jon Jones strike first. Jon Jones led in most of the exchanges, and that's something you can't do with Jon Jones. I thought we were going to see a more aggressive Anthony Smith. I think that's what we're going to see from Thiago Santos if he ever gets in the octagon with Jon Jones. But still, Jon Jones led all the striking. On the grappling exchanges, Jon Jones was safe with the way that he was holding Anthony Smith against the cage. The only real scare in the fight was an illegal knee that came from Jon Jones in the 4th round. Anthony Smith could have just sat back and took the title by DQ, but decided to get up. Jon Jones took a 2-point deduction, but still, a dominant performance like that was enough with the 2-point deduction to give Jon Jones the unanimous decision victory. And what would have been, if that 2-point deduction didn't come, a 50-44 outing. And that does it for UFC 235, Jon Jones, Anthony Smith, and what was a very, very stacked card. It lived up to most of the hype. I don't think we were expecting to see some crazy finishes, but we got some crazy finishes with Cody Garbrandt, Pedro Munhoz. We got a great fight in Ben Askren, Robbie Lawler. We got some great fights in the undercard with Zabit, Stevens. We got a great fight with Johnny Walker, Misha, Cirkunov. So that's the recap from the fight. Later on today, we will be doing a full breakdown with my opinions, more than just a recap of the fights. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you want to learn more about MMA, do the same. And if you enjoyed the video, if you enjoyed the recap, just hit that like button. It means the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.